Hello, Nikon FM3A. Probably one of the best film-based cameras you can buy these days. My name is Jonathan Harris. I'm going to run through the features of the camera and quickly also just run through what to check if you're buying secondhand. Okay, so here it is, Nikon FM3. Introduced in around 2001, built for about 5 years, not a long production run. It replaced the FM2 and the FE2. The FM2 was the fully mechanical version of this camera. The FE2 had an electronically controlled shutter with aperture priority. Those two cameras in turn replaced the FE and the FM. So what does the FM3 give you? Fundamentally, Nikon took the FM2, they took the FE2, and they combined them into this model. This has all the advantages of the FM2. It has the mechanically controlled shutter, so when you've got the camera set to manual, as it is here, set to 1 second, you'll hear the mechanical timing doing its stuff. If you switch it to the aperture priority automatic setting, there, the green A setting, it then controls the shutter electronically. The viewfinder is very similar to the FE2 viewfinder, where you have a little needle which aligns with the shutter speed that you need to use, and as you turn the various aperture dial and shutter dial, a secondary little needle moves up to match the needle. Very basic, very simple way of metering, and tried and tested. I mean, this camera in its various forms has been made for decades. So on the top you have a shutter speed dial, fairly clear, fairly obvious, wind on, shutter release on the front, obviously a flash shoe on the top, rewind, typical rewind. You have exposure compensation there if you need it. Looking at the front, we have the depth of field preview and self timer. And on this side, the Nikon lens release takes the standard Nikon AI or AIS lenses. Obviously, you can mount older lenses too. You can stick a non-AI lens on, but you won't get the metering. You can also stick on modern AF lenses. Most will work perfectly, but do check because there are some exceptions. Flash connection just there. Moving on to the base, you've got the battery compartment there. It takes two of the little 10L14 button cells. As I said, all that does is actually control the meter in manual. If you've got it in aperture priority, it controls the meter and the shutter timing, so it doesn't need much in the way of power. And this connection here and this connection here, they're just for the MD12 motor drive, which you may or may not want. Most users just use the camera in its purest form, but there is a motor drive option if you want it. That's the little button you press in just to rewind the film. Just looking in the back, again, a very traditional setup. Film goes in there, pulls across, wind it on a couple of times, and away you go. Very simple camera. So if you're buying one of these secondhand, you do have to be a little bit careful. As I said, it was made for about 5 years, so it's discontinued in about 2006, 2007. So the youngest one of these you're going to find is going to be 15+ years old. So if you are looking to buy one secondhand, do take a bit of time because you want something that's going to serve you well. Fundamentally, look at three things: look at the cosmetics, look at the optics, and then look at the mechanics and the electronics. Just make sure the thing's working. Okay, first of all, check it over cosmetically. Have a look at the top. Make sure there are no dings on the prism. The prisms on these cameras are quite vulnerable, and they do often get knocked. Just make sure that these various the top section there is parallel to the Nikon nameplate. It's quite common to see them knocked, and you'll see that those two don't align. So if that's come out of alignment, it's a sign that the top has been knocked. So be cautious. Also, just have a look at the back and make sure that all aligns properly. Look at the wear around the strap lugs. Make sure it doesn't show a huge amount of wear around the strap lugs. And obviously look on the base just to see how much marking there is on the base. And with all these cameras, the black and the chrome versions, the back there is painted black. And you can see very easily how much use it's had. You can see there's a little chip of black paint just come away there. This camera is actually in very nice condition, not perfect, but not bad. If they've had a lot of use, you'll see a lot of this black paint has chipped away. Also, when you're looking at the cosmetics, just have a look at the lens mount and just make sure there isn't excessive wear there. Now, these are robust cameras, they're designed to be used, so a few signs of use aren't necessarily a problem. What you really want to do is to avoid the heavily used cameras. Avoid the cameras that have clearly been dented, clearly been misused. So it's a good idea to check over the cosmetics, because it'll tell you relatively quickly and relatively accurately what sort of life the camera's lived. Once you're happy that cosmetically it's clean, I'll just have a look at the optics. Now, not much glass here, but do still check this quite carefully. Have a look at the mirror. Have a look through the camera to make sure the viewfinder's clean. Now the screen does change, so if the screen is scratched, that's not the end of the world. You certainly can change the screen. Also look into the viewfinder, shine a bright light into the camera. Just make sure that there's no nasty marks, dust or spots of fungus inside. They're getting on a bit, fungus is becoming a bit of an issue, so do check that. I'll put a link above that just explains a bit more about fungus. So just check the viewfinder, make sure it's clean. On the mirror, a few little marks, not necessarily an issue, but if it's been looked after, it really should be clean. So you've checked the cosmetics, you've checked the optics. Next thing to do is just quickly check through the functionality. Now, the first thing to check here is light seals. The light seals on these cameras do need to be replaced every 10 years or so, and if a camera hasn't been serviced, the chances are the light seals will need to be replaced. So you can see you've got a foam strip there. There's foam all running all around there and all around there. You need to make sure that that's in nice, clean condition. It's not getting tar-like. It should be spongy. If it isn't spongy, then you've got a problem. Rub your finger around there, rub your finger down there, because often what happens, if this begins to disintegrate here, it ends up sticking on there, and when you rub your finger down there, you'll get a nasty black mark on your finger. That shows the light seals need to be replaced. Also, have a look at the mirror foam just here. Just make sure that's clean. I mean, sometimes you look at these cameras, you'll see a little black mark on the base of the mirror. That's not a problem. What that's caused by is the mirror going up, hitting the foam, which is in itself disintegrating, and it then leaves a little sort of tarry mark on the mirror itself. And often what you can find is when you fire the shutter, if you fire it on 1 second, like that, the mirror actually sticks, which gives you a bit of a shock. But in fact, it isn't anything within the camera sticking. What's happening is the mirror itself is sticking to the disintegrating foam, just there. The camera works fine, it appears to stick, it is just that foam that needs to be replaced. So keep an eye open for that. Once you're happy that the seals are okay, just run through the shutter and just have a very quick look at the meter. Set it to manual and just stick on B and just make sure the shutter is opening and closing as it should be. You can open the back up and you can just you can quite easily just look through there. And just you can see the shutter is opening and closing as it should be on B. Then move up to a second. Again, make sure it's opening and closing. Make sure it's whirring and not sticking. If it's sticking open or if the sound is erratic, if you can hear it stuttering, that's the problem. Move it up to half a second. You can't time it obviously, but just make sure it is firing more quickly. Move it to a quarter of a second, more quickly still. Up to 1/8 of a second, quicker still. Take the lens off and just open the back, stick to the highest speed, hold it up and just look through the shutter at a bright light. It's a vertical shutter. You want to make sure you can see light at all points. You can see light at the top and at the bottom. If you see a dark stripe across the top, that's a sign the shutter is misfiring. You can't time it on the highest speed, but what you want to make sure is you can see light all the way through. And if you can see light all the way through top to bottom on the high speed and the slow speeds aren't sticking, you can be fairly sure that the shutter is reliable. Next thing I'll do is just stick onto automatic and just make sure that the automatic timing is working as it should be. If you're indoors, I don't know what the exposure indoors is going to be. I mean, this is a 2.8 lens. I'd expect it to be around a 30th. I mean, just look through and just make sure that the metering is the meter is reading roughly as you'd expect it to be. Compare it to another meter, compare it to another camera. Of course, that's great. But don't expect them to be the same because they never are. You might get a deviation of a third or a half of a stop. That really is quite normal. So just make sure it's reading as it should be, and then just move the aperture. And just make sure that the aperture timing, the shutter timing rather, is changing as you move the aperture. And I've just taken that down to the minimum aperture, and you can hear the shutter is certainly far slower than it was. You can hear that the camera is doing its stuff. Again, if you can hear that, you can be fairly sure that the timing is working well. Also have a look through at the needle and just make sure the needle isn't sticking. I've never seen it on the FM3A, but I've certainly seen it on FE2s. When they need a service, that the metering needle itself starts to stick. Sadly, on the FE2, that isn't repairable, so effectively it writes off the meter. And I suspect the same is true on this, if it indeed suffers from the same issue. It could be that Nikon has sorted it out, in which case great. But do check it, just look through and make sure the needle flicks up and down as it should. Very, very positive. If you see it sort of if it's very sluggish and very slow, that's an issue. Just walk away from the camera because you can't necessarily get that fixed. Okay, lots of people do want to do tests with the film as well. I mean, that's a really good thing to do if you have the opportunity. But do run through the checks I've just talked about here as well, just to be on the safe side, because a test film won't necessarily show that the slow speed is sticking. It won't necessarily show that the highest speed is the shutter on the highest speed isn't opening fully. So test films absolutely, but do these other checks as well. Okay, so you've checked you've checked the mechanics, you've checked the metering is working well, you've checked the timing on the metering is working well. I mean, you've run a film through it. If you've done that, you can be fairly sure you've got a good, reliable camera. Okay, so just in summary, you've checked the cosmetics, you've got a tick for that. You've checked the optics, the viewfinder is nice and clean, you've got a tick for that. You've checked that it's mechanically okay, and you've checked that the electronics, the meter, are working well. I mean, if you pass all those tests, then you can be sure you've got a good, reliable camera. I hope that's been useful. If you have any comments, please stick them in the box below. Otherwise, please subscribe and like, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.